Hello, I'm Jackie Lockie, your financial planning maestro. This series of podcasts is aimed at financial planning professionals and also those who are looking to enter the financial planning profession. We will be talking during the podcast about all things certified financial planner certification related, talking to other CFPs around the world, and also we will be dropping in on some new entrants who've just entered the financial planning profession, and we'll be checking up along the way on a regular basis with them to see how they're getting on. I hope you enjoy today's podcast. Hello and welcome. I'm Jackie Lockie, your financial planning maestro. And this is a very special series of podcasts, the Expert Series, because I am joined by an ex-CFP case study assessor, and that is Chris Wicks. Hello, Chris.
Hi, Jackie.
In our series of podcasts, we have probably, how many case studies have we marked over the years together? 1,000 each, maybe more than that? Many. So I think between us, we have just about seen virtually every iteration, wriggle out of technical error, all sorts of different things from the number of years that we have been assessing level 6 plans as it was back in the day, but obviously level 7 with the CISI case study assessment now. So we are going to chat through some of offering our best tips and sharing our thinking around specific areas to help you if you are thinking of embarking on the process to gain your CFP. Now, these series of podcasts are going to concentrate specifically on the level 7 case study. So we're assuming that if you are a CII chartered financial planner, that you have done the online professional assessment bridge called the Principles and Practice of Financial Planning. If you are not CII chartered financial planner, then you will have to do the CISI Advanced Financial Planning Level 6 exam before embarking on the Level 7. But for our expert series of podcasts, we are going to concentrate on the Level 7, and we're going to kick off by looking at some of the basics right through to giving you lots of tips along the way. So, Chris, I think you've got some questions and we've got lots to discuss today.
I think the first area we're going to look at is the preparation approach. So really, what are your best tips to get prepared before you receive your case study and how to approach it?
Okay, so the first thing to remember is that you've got a 10-week window, haven't you, to from when you get your case study to the date which you must submit it for your financial plan for assessment. So we've got lots of tips to share with you. The first thing to remember is the pass mark. There is an overall pass mark of 65%, but also for each of the individual learning outcomes, you have to get a minimum of 51% in each of them. So you can't get 100% in one and 0 in the other, or 2% in one and 100% in another and pass overall. You've got to be consistently at 51% or more across the board. And the next thing to think about from your own personal development is to make sure that you have sufficient technical knowledge. So if you've done the level 6 exam or you're a chartered financial planner with a CII already, then you should have enough technical knowledge. But one of the areas that I find most people fall down on is estate planning, and particularly doing IHT calculations for unmarried couples or for perhaps siblings who are cohabiting together. And many people seem to think that unmarried couples are treated as married couples, and also where gifts are involved as well. It can get quite complicated, can't it?
Certainly can do. And I think that where you can get some of the best tips for making sure you prepare adequately is from the actual examiner's standards. Because most people, I think, fail to read these, which explains why a lot of people don't actually pass, at least the first time round.
Yeah.
It shows you in the examiner's standards exactly what they're looking for. And so if you look at that before you actually kick off with any brushing up of knowledge, it will show you the areas where you need to make sure you're up to scratch. So,
yeah.
And I'd recommend that you do any of that before you actually pay your money and get the case study, because the clock has started as soon as you received it.
Yes. And those assessment criteria, they're in a document called a candidate guidance, and that is on the CISI website. And I'll put a link to that in the show notes. So once you've listened to the rest of the podcast, you can scan down to the bottom, and I'll put some links in there for everybody who's listening. One of the other things that I find that people need to brush up on is their Excel spreadsheet skills. Not just the basics of how to add up, subtract, and do some of the basics with Excel, but also using things like if statements and nested if statements. So a nested if statement, for those of you who are kind of pulling a face whilst listening to us now, is where you have two if statements put together. So you might say, if something is bigger than that, then do something else. But if it's smaller than that, then do something different. And that's what a nested if statement is.
And the good news is that YouTube is full of videos that explain in very simple terms how to do all of these things. And again, it's best not to approach the case study where you haven't yet learned how to do these things. It's best to honestly spend a bit of time making sure you're happy that you know what you're doing with it and practicing it a bit before you actually embark on the case study.
Yeah, and that's a really good point, isn't it? You don't want somebody to be learning something new and trying to apply it at the same time, because you become unstuck pretty quickly, don't you?
And I mean, dare I say it, but your study material does in fact contain detailed instructions as well on all the things you need to do as well, which is extremely useful, and people really should make use of it.
Yeah, and people do, really benefit from it. That's one of the things for those people who listen regularly to our podcast. Lots of people who have passed their CFP and become a CFP professional over the last 18 months or so. It's about 120 people we've helped get through that now. And without a shadow of a doubt, every single person, whether they're paying themselves or whether their employer is paying, they've all said to me that, they just couldn't have done it without it, because what was to be expected, what I asked them to do was completely different to what they were expecting to have to do. But one of the other things that certainly we have found, haven't we, with the training courses that we have been running, is this need to think critically. So just tell everybody who's listening what we mean by that.
So I think the thing is that, when people do things, they often do them passively, don't they? So you can knock up a spreadsheet and generate lots of data. You can look at a fact finder and see what's all there without really thinking hard about it. And you really do need to think hard about it. You need to look at it and ask yourself a series of what if questions or so what questions about the information you've got, so that you can actually draw out what does it actually mean for this particular client and what are you possibly going to do about it. So that's what we mean by critical reasoning. And you can tell when you're doing critical reasoning, because unlike passively doing stuff, it makes you get very tired quite quickly. And that's why people don't like doing it. But you really do have to do it in order to get through the case study.
Yeah. And it's, when you're going through the case study, it's quite an emotional roller coaster, isn't it? So actually training yourself to think critically, as you say, it's quite a tiring process, but also it's something you can start doing now. You can ask yourself with clients or with yourself, if you created your own fact find on yourself, well, why did you say that? What does it mean to you to say that? And when you're looking at the data, it's not just, oh, well, she pays £50,000 a year into her pension or whatever it is, but why are you doing it? What happens if I do something different? What are the long-term implications of taking a particular course of action?
And also, what do things knock onto? So when you look at a particular piece of information about a client, whether it's numerical or otherwise, particularly when you're thinking about your recommendations, but also just their current situation, that it can actually impact on other areas of their finances, can't it? So it's really important to actually try to think through that, particularly when you're making recommendations, really.
Yeah.
Can I add one other little thing as well, which is that when, at the heart of producing the case study will be you using Excel and building quite a substantial Excel worksheet, and you're going to make mistakes in it. Now, so, you need to make sure that you construct it logically, understand logically all the steps you're taking, but you really also need to practice your troubleshooting skills with it, because you are going to get trouble. And, what you shouldn't do is throw up your hands in horror and go, oh dear, I've come to an impasse, I've no idea what to do. You need to practice trying to fix the problem for yourself as best as you can do.
Yes. And actually, on the courses, that's the benefit of having, our group sessions and our drop-in sessions together, but also everybody who attends the courses have a series of one-to-ones as well. So, if you get in a mess, then, we can help you during these one-to-ones. But really, as we've been saying in the past, we want you to come to us with those ideas, with those thoughts. Well, this is my problem. This is how I want to fix it. And if you come with a problem with your Excel spreadsheets and you've been completing one of the courses that we run, then, one of the things that you were saying to everybody on the courses recently was, put my video of the formulae next to your spreadsheet of the formulae and then say to yourself, are those two identical? Because we've had a number of cases where people say, oh, yes, definitely. They are the same. There's a problem. And then when you put them next to each other, lo and behold, they are different.
That's right. So accuracy is really important, and attention to detail are both extremely important in all these things. I don't know whether you can practice them. We all have different tendencies, don't we, really?
Yeah.
These are things that you have to really beef up on so that you can get a good outcome for yourself.
Yeah. So let's talk about how long it takes to create a financial plan, because this is a huge piece of work, isn't it? I mean, it's a maximum of 60 pages of text. The CISI provides and dictates actually the font size and the paragraph spacing, not the margin sizing though, which is interesting. But broadly speaking, you've got 60 pages of text, and that includes pasting any spreadsheets in there as well. So the whole thing needs to be in a Word document, no more than 60 pages long by the assessment deadline, doesn't it? So how long does it take to put all of that together?
Well, it's going to take between 150 and 200 hours or so. So quite a lot of time. And it means that your time management needs to be good, because you've obviously got a living to make at the same time. Only real way you're going to do it is to actually block off time in your diary for doing the work. And then having done that, actually honor the time you booked in your diary, because there's no point in blocking off time in your diary and then ignoring what you blocked off and cracking on doing other stuff, because you simply won't make the progress that you need to make with it.
If you think about it, if we said 200 hours, you've got 10 weeks to add in an extra 200 hours of work. So, you are looking at, the 15 to 20 hours per week, every week for 10 weeks. And obviously, we would prefer that you did it in slightly less than 10 weeks. So you had time to leave it alone, to let your brain decompress before going back and marking it and reading it for the final time before submitting it. Because that's one of the assessors, worst or numerous comments that they make is that they can tell when nobody's read their plan. They've kind of just finished it at like 4:00 in the afternoon of the submission deadline, and they've gone, oh, I need to get a shot of it and just go ping and send it in. And then obviously the assessors are wading through 60 pages of potentially typos and contradictions, which just annoys them, doesn't it?
Well, I mean, examiners generally start with a well of goodwill. I mean, in effect, the candidates have got some credit in the bank when the examiner first looks at the assessment, and then that gets whittled away by successive mistakes and typos and not properly thought through and so on. It's actually a classic exam technique thing, isn't it, really? It's really important before you send in your work that you actually do read it and make sure it all makes sense, I was thinking further on, insofar as the time management, it's not enough just to block off blank periods of time. You need to break the job down into its component parts. So and you're going to we're going to go through it, but you're going to start off with your analysis, aka your spreadsheets, and they're going to cover different topics. So you should really try to break down the time you've allocated for particular jobs in a logical order, and make sure that you complete each task before you move on to the next task, and also focus only on the task that you're doing. And that way you'll progress in a logical order all the way through until you reach the end with your report beautifully written with a few days to spare, hopefully.
That's the plan.
Exactly.
And one of the things that we normally come across is, people say to me quite a lot, how, what order do I need to tackle everything in? In section 17 of the fact find, the clients describe their order of priority for their particular objectives of that case study that you end up working on. And the one thing that I always impress on people is that that is not an indication or an instruction from the CISI to you, the planner or paraplanner, to create the plan in that order. You can create it in any order, can't you? Because you're doing the whole thing.
That's right. I mean, the CISI does actually provide you with a template structure for the plan, doesn't it? Mm-hmm. Which has all the sort of key paragraph headings that you should be using. And honestly, I probably would stick to that. Remember that this is not machine marked, it's marked by a person. And so you need to make sure that you structure the whole thing logically in a way that they can follow it. Because if you don't do that, and if you waffle and ramble and go off on digressions and don't stick to the point, then the examiner may get lost in all of this. And even if you've actually covered the relevant points, they're simply not going to connect the dots enough to actually determine you've actually met the relevant standards. So do try to stick to a logical, structured order, and then you hopefully will be okay.
Yes. And that logical structured order, the way that we normally recommend it in our courses, is to basically start off with a short-term objective first, then retirement, then protection, then estate planning. And obviously, that it's not compulsory that you do it that way, but particularly where it comes to the protection planning, it seems to be a tendency for many people to do the protection planning first. But of course, then the whole thing falls out of bed because you spend the money or you protect the client's existing income. And then as you work through the other scenarios, like retirement planning in particular is probably where it has the biggest impact, but school fees as well, you are spending money left, right and center and allocating it elsewhere, aren't you? So then all of those protection solutions that you've put in place at the very start of the plan are now all incorrect because they're not protecting the incomes and going in the right direction, are they?
So I think that's absolutely right. So the whole process begins with analyze the data. You start with now, whether you're looking at retirement and what happens if you die now. So you do all that now, so you know what the current situation is, and then you go on and work out what you're going to do about any deficiencies you've identified. And I'd also add more broadly that you really need to do all of your analysis first before you even think about starting to write up the report. Don't start writing up the report before you've done the analysis. The report is fitted to your analysis and its conclusions, not the other way around, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, absolutely. And in our second podcast, we are going to talk a bit more about the analysis and the approach to all of that. So, Chris, before we sign off for this particular episode, is there anything else that we need to make sure that we've told everybody?
I think we broadly covered the key things, really. Don't know what we can say. This prior preparation prevents poor performance, isn't it? So the prior preparation really is important, and you need to be thinking hard about what you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Block out that time in your diary and get yourself organized. Don't do what some people who have managed to pass have done, and that is, go on a course, plan out whether you're going to get support, whether you're doing it yourself. If you attend a course, make sure that your diary is clear and you're fully present whilst on that course so that you don't have client meetings interrupting you and things like that. So you can 100% give that maximum effort and concentration to passing this assessment. And, we know that certainly on current stats, about 44% of people who attend one of our courses pass on their very first submission, with a total of 88% of people passing on either submission 1 or 2. So we know that if you give it your all, that the support that we can offer helps. But in any event, it is the time that's taken, those up to 200 hours, needs to be spread across however many submissions that you take in order to pass the level 7 assessment. So we hope that you have enjoyed our first in the series of our Experts Talk podcast. It's really interesting, isn't it, to listen to different people who have different experiences of gaining their certified financial planner certification, or maybe developing the financial planning profession at large. If you know anybody who you think might be interested in listening to any of these podcasts, then please do pass on our details. That's it for me. I hope you've enjoyed today's episode. See you again soon. Bye for now.